Trauma is not what happens to you, but what happens inside you as a result of what happened to you. If you've been trying to figure out what's wrong with you, as I have for years, you've probably heard this quote from Dr. Gabor Mate. The telltale signs that someone has been through trauma are not always obvious, especially if the person isn't someone we think as of a typical extrovert. Ambiverts and introverts on the other side of trauma might simply look less outgoing. They might take less care of themselves than they once did. They might even come across as a little more defensive or snappy at times. I identify as an ambivert. I've always loved my walks in nature and my quiet time, but I've also always enjoyed connecting with people. In fact, I was known as the one who organized fun events, even from a young age. Organizing events was at the heart of my first business, even though I never cared for big crowds. I owned a beauty and talent agency. What I loved most was creating magical experiences for ordinary people working together with my core team and outside experts. The best part was seeing those efforts take shape, contestants living their wildest dreams, and audiences swept up in the joy of it all. But in recent years, I noticed I didn't care much about being socially active. Just the thought of getting ready and looking presentable felt like too much work, when all I really wanted was to walk down the roadside in shorts or yoga pants, hair pulled back in a ponytail, or simply left messy. Had I not studied trauma, I wouldn't have recognized these as symptoms, and maybe you, my listener, will recognize them in yourself too. As I've been working my way out of trauma, I've made an effort to be intentional about meeting people again. Last week, I joined a local discussion group. Their topic of the week was faith. In this episode, after the podcast intro, I'll share what I observed and what I took away from that evening, especially how it connects to my bigger theme, rising and thriving in middle life after trauma. Welcome to She Became CEO, the podcast for women transforming body, mindset, relationships, and money. I'm your host, Ilze B., and here we speak boldly, heal deeply, and lead lives we're proud of. This is about becoming the CEO of your voice, your business, and your life on your terms. Let's begin. I'll admit I felt a little nervous as I walked into the brewery, which was the meeting place. The first thing I noticed was the smell of hops in the air and the buzz of a relatively quiet Thursday night chatter from the other tables. Our group didn't particularly stand out. In fact, first I approached another group with much younger people. I was revealed when they directed me towards another group further back by the wall. I saw mixed demographics, quite a few of whom could have been my age, men and women. That felt better. We had gathered around a long wooden table, notebooks and phones scattered between the pints of beer. There were about a dozen of us. I didn't order a drink. Nothing against beer, but as a carnivore I wasn't tempted by the pretzels or fried snacks either. I just had water, and honestly, it helped me stay more present. The organizer, a cheerful man in his late 40s or early 50s with long black curls and a short beard, welcomed us and reminded everyone of the evening's topic: faith. He read a few of the prep questions aloud, then opened the floor. Almost immediately, a woman across from me, let's call her Janet, leaned in. She had that intensity in her eyes, the kind that said she'd been waiting all week to speak. Faith without religion is meaningless, she declared. Janet wasn't the only one who tied faith to religion. A couple of seats to her left, another woman, let's call her Linda, spoke up with equal conviction. For me, faith can't be separated from religion. I was raised Christian, yes, but I'm not Christian anymore. Still, faith has to come through religion. And then, to my surprise, she started quoting the Bible, chapter and verse like a Sunday school teacher. I caught myself thinking, wait, isn't the Bible the Christian book? How do you use the Bible as your foundation and still say you are not Christian? Of course, I didn't say it out loud. It was one of those moments where you just nod politely and think, interesting. Before Linda could go further, a man down the table, let's call him Mark, jumped in. He'd been quiet until then, but once he started, he was on a roll. I am an atheist, he announced. So for me, faith has nothing to do with religion. Faith is what I have every morning when I get in my old Toyota and press the brake pedal. Do I believe it will stop? Yes. Do I have faith that it will stop on a dime? Absolutely not. That faith has been declining every year since 2012. The table cracked up. Then Mark leaned in, lowering his voice like he was telling a secret. But let's be honest. You all realize the Bible wasn't downloaded from the cloud, right? It was men, Roman Catholic priests, deciding, let's keep this story, throw that one out. Imagine a priest with a quill in one hand and a glass of wine in the other saying, miracles? Keep those in. Talking donkey? Nah, too much. That earned him both groans and laughter. Linda, undeterred, came right back. But what about miracles? People in history experienced them. That's why we believe today. Mark shot her look. So, basically, we're supposed to believe because some guy 2,000 years ago said he saw something shiny in the sky? That's like me saying I saw Elvis at Walmart and expecting everyone to build a religion around it. At that, half the table laughed so hard beer nearly sprayed. The other half sat stiff, clearly unimpressed. And there I was, in the middle of it all, listening, observing, trying to untangle the words, faith and belief, while the air around us thickened with hops, laughter, and contradiction. Then Maria, sitting beside me, raised her hand politely, though no one had asked for hands. Her voice was soft but steady. For me, faith is what kept me going when I lost my son. I doubted God every day, but I also clung to him. Faith and doubt lived together inside me, and somehow both were real. The table fell quiet for a moment, the weight of her story settling like a blanket over the room. I decided to contribute, but first I pointed out something. Notice how quickly our conversation jumped to religion and history? That's important, but what about faith in ourselves? Faith in everyday life? A few heads turned, some smiled politely, some looked skeptical, but I pressed on. I said, from my perspective as a linguist, belief is what we think is true. Faith goes one step further. It's the trust that moves us to act. And sometimes that faith is in God, but sometimes it's in the Creator within us. It can be faith within ourselves. Ethan raised his glass, grinning. Now, that I can get behind. Janet muttered, sounds a little self-centered to me. The organizer chuckled and brought us back to the question list. All right, here's one. Can faith and doubt exist at the same time? That was my cue. Yes, I said. I think it's called cognitive dissonance. The table burst into laughter. They thought I was joking, and in a way I was, but I meant it too. Haven't we all lived with both? The hope that something will work out, alongside the nagging fear that it won't? I thought about my own life, about the blind faith I once had when I moved from Latvia to the US. I trusted completely, without questioning, and it cost me dearly in my marriage. If I had balanced that faith with more rational thought, I might have spared myself heartbreak. But even in that pain, I learned lessons that serve me today. As the conversation kept flowing, faith as received, faith as chosen, faith as challenged, I realized something. This is exactly how entrepreneurship feels too, sitting in the tension between faith and doubt, believing just enough to act, even when fear whispers, "What if you fail?" The conversations at the table kept bouncing back and forth. Someone would quote a Bible verse, another would roll their eyes and talk about history, and every so often Maria would bring us back to something tender and personal. I admired that. She wasn't debating, she was simply offering her lived truth. At one point, the organizer asked, "So, is faith something we choose or something we receive?" A man at the far end, Tom, leaned back in his chair with a thoughtful expression. "When I was a kid, I just had it. Faith was given to me like my mother's hand holding mine. But as I got older, as things went wrong, I had to rebuild it. It stopped being something I had. It became something I worked for." Heads nodded. A woman beside him added, "Yeah, same here. Childhood faith feels like breathing. Adult faith feels like exercise. You have to keep doing it, or you lose a muscle." That commitment stayed with me, because it's exactly how I see the midlife journey too. When we are young, we are carried by momentum, by other people's expectations, by the structures around us. But once we've been through trauma, through loss, through betrayal, faith isn't automatic anymore. We have to cultivate it intentionally, like building a muscle. That business I built in my 20s, it was like a fun game. I was young, with fewer wounds, so it was easier to trust it would work out. And it did, until I reached a point where a limiting belief, probably not even mine, but an inherited one, made me stop and give up. Later, when I started my translation business, I was more cautious. It kicked off, but eventually hit an invisible ceiling I couldn't grow through. We finally closed it last year. It hadn't grown since I left Latvia. In fact, it hadn't grown at all, and in business, standing still means decline, because the world around you keeps moving. I started a business in the US too. For a long time I told myself it failed because of my family situation at the time. Traumatic, paralyzing, chaotic. I couldn't show up publicly and promote my services. That was the story I told myself. And yes, those circumstances were unfair, even malicious at times. I blamed my ex for creating a situation so suffocating that I couldn't breathe, let alone build. But if I'm being fully honest, and I am ready to be, Deep down, I know something else. I would have been unstoppable, no matter the circumstances, if I hadn't been carrying my wounds. Predators sense weakness. Dr. Gabor Mate talks about it, and former CIA agent Evie Pomporous says the same. They don't go after the strongest target. They go after the one whose defenses are already cracked. And in hindsight, I can see it. My ex and his associates sniffed out my wounds like blood in the water. But here's what I want to make clear. I don't assign all that power to him anymore. Not today. Because if I keep saying, he did this to me, he stopped me from succeeding, then I hand him the pen and let him write the story of my life. The truth is, it was me. Not consciously, but in the 97% of my mind that runs the show beneath the surface, it did it unconsciously. I froze. I hid. I let those wounds decide for me. And now I'm taking that power back. I see it so clearly now. The money wound. The limiting belief that said, you can achieve this much, but no more. Stay small. More is for others, not for you. It was like an invisible glass ceiling I kept bumping my head against. I thought I was sabotaged from the outside, but really, I was sabotaged from within. I can picture it now. Me at my desk, fingers hovering over the keyboard, knowing I should write a post or make a video to promote my services, and then freeze. My chest tight, my mind black, the whisper in my head saying, don't, you'll be judged, you'll be laughed at, you'll fail. I'd close the laptop telling myself I was too tired. Then I'd scroll through Instagram and see other women promoting their businesses confidently, smiling into the camera, unapologetic. And that familiar sting would come. See, they can do it, you can't. But that wasn't truth. That was trauma. That was the money wound. And I realize now that wound didn't even begin with me. It was inherited. The sigh at the kitchen table when my mother said, we can't afford that. The unspoken rule in my family, don't want too much. Appreciate what you have. Money doesn't make you happy. My subconscious translated those words into a harsher truth. If you ask for too much, what you already have will be taken away. And money makes people miserable. So I learned to be content with what I had, repeating to myself, success is for others, not for you. But now I know better. Trauma taught me something. As much as it tried to break me, it showed me that what I thought was safety, staying small, staying invisible, was really a cage. And breaking free of that cage is why I can sit here today telling you this story. So yes, my ex played his part, but he doesn't own my story. I do. And that means I own my future too. Understanding that gave me language for what used to feel irrational. Trauma doesn't argue in facts, it speaks through the subconscious. There is no rational explanation behind it. The subconscious runs the show 97% of the time within every one of us. I know that now because my last complex trauma shook me awake. As hard as that season was, I can honestly say it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. It gave me clarity of purpose. I know now how I can and want to help. So sitting there at the brewery table, listening, remembering, thinking my thoughts, I realized this is entrepreneurship in disguise. Starting a business is an act of faith. Growing a business is the next level faith that requires shedding limiting beliefs. Being a CEO requires faith, not blind faith, but cultivated faith. Faith in yourself, even if you've been hurt before. Faith in your vision, even while doubt whispers in your ear. Faith in the Creator within you to give you the courage to take the next step. I looked around the table at Janet with her sharp certainty, at Ethan with his restless conviction, at Maria with her grief-woven strength, and I thought, this is what building something new feels like. A messy mix of belief, doubt, and trust. Noisy, imperfect, sometimes even contradictory. And yet here we were, talking, showing up, choosing to share perspectives instead of staying home alone. That to me is the first step to thriving after trauma, showing up even when you'd rather withdraw. And here's the beautiful thing. Once you do, community shows up around you, just like this group at the brewery. Some people won't get it. Some will disagree. But some will lean in, nod, and say, yes, I see what you mean. And those are the ones who become your allies, your clients, your co-creators. That's how you move from loneliness into connection, from survival into thriving. I hope Ellen, Marta, and Nicole, the women I described in episode 22, had come out to join our discussion. If they had, I would have told them, I have faith in you. I know you can succeed. If you desire something that hasn't yet manifested in your life, it's not because it's impossible. It's because of a limiting belief. And when we heal trauma, what may seem like miracles, yes, miracles are possible. Not only in ancient stories, but in our lives, here and now. So, dear listener, here's my invitation to you. If you've been hiding away because of old hurts, take one small step back into community. I know it isn't easy to leave the house, but once you get there, wherever there is, it will feel different. Maybe it's a conversation circle like this one. Maybe it's a workshop. Or maybe it's finally sketching out the idea for a business you've been carrying quietly in your heart. Your business can be the next step. More than a financial tool, it can become your practice ground for faith. A way to create relationships, rebuild trust in people, and embody your resilience. A living expression of your healing and your ability to thrive. If this resonates with you, keep listening. And if you're ready now to explore entrepreneurship as your healing path, I'd love to connect. I'll share resources to help you begin, because your best years aren't behind you. They're waiting on the other side of faith. Thanks for listening to She Became CEO. If this episode sparked something in you, share it with a woman who is ready to reclaim her voice, her business, or her life. You can subscribe, leave a review, or explore more at shebecameceo.com. And remember, the transformation starts with you. Until the next time, lead boldly and speak your truth.